Are you saying that the medium is more important than the message it carries?
No. The medium is not more important than the message. It's obvious. The medium is the message.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another video with Swaggle. And in this video, we got to talk about the late, great Marshall McLuhan. The medium is the message. And in this particular case, the medium of comic book selling right now is sort of the message that is being brought to us as comic book collectors. And in this video, I kind of want to go over some recent things that have been happening in the comic book collecting hobby and talk about them sort of in a broader scope, because I sort of have a feeling that we are on a one-way street to a particular destination, and it might not be the best thing for the comic book collecting hobby. But before I get into the video, if you guys could drop me a like or comment or subscribe if you're enjoying the content, helps support the channel, doing those things I would appreciate. But let's get into this video here today. All right, now, this is going to be a little bit more of a kind of shoot from the hip, a little bit more of a rambly video. I don't like to often make, doomer scenario videos or black pill scenario videos or things like that. I don't like to add a lot of negativity into my life, but I do think that there are some interesting things to talk about with the comic book collecting hobby. A couple of stories have popped up recently, and individually I had thought about addressing them here on the YouTube channel and having this conversation, having this discussion with you guys here. But for the most part, I thought that they weren't necessarily big enough, or I didn't feel confident in my overall thoughts on them until recently. This news article that came out by CGC just the other day. And I kind of wanted to kind of show you guys that article and really kind of, take a wider stance on it and really talk about, where we see this industry moving, where we see things going. Because while there is a lot of great things happening and there's a lot of great tools coming into the market, like Whatnot, which I'm going to get into in this video, I do think that there are some things that might need more checks and balances in the collectible hobby. And I'm not really sure where those are going to come from. I mean, we've said it on this channel many, many times. There's no governing bodies that are going to regulate this sort of thing. And even in the grander, societal, technological issues, there's so many things that are occurring in the tech space and the ethics surrounding it that, even the US government, the world governments are having problems sort of regulating these sort of developments. But before I talk to nebulously and all that stuff, let's kind of get into a few of the things that sort of spark this conversation that I have for you guys here today. This idea of the medium being the message. Now, in 2022, we've seen definitely the rise of the application of Whatnot. And certainly we've had conversations about, acetate gate and all those sort of things and, how those tie to Whatnot. And, Whatnot, I think as a platform, we can all agree is an excellent tool. I mean, I think, in its purest form, it's giving, comic book collectors and comic book sellers an avenue to exchange goods in a very, very efficient way. But they've recently been dragged into some controversies through their platform and things that are going on with it. And I think, we'll address that at the end of the video. But let's focus on this one particular story here. And that is this idea that first came out when CGC and Whatnot were doing kind of this partnership for Jim Lee. Now, at this particular time, I think there were a lot of, comic book collectors that sort of pulled out the pitchforks and were, seeing sort of the, the conflicts of interest that might have existed in this particular branding partnership. When it was all said and done, it really was just sort of CGC, doing a cross promotion thing with Whatnot, and they weren't necessarily selling their own books. At least that's not what it was at first. So I think, some of the flames of this story died down. But the reason I bring it up is because it kind of has a connection to where ultimately we are going to go with this conversation. Now, additionally, we all know about this Batman 423, kind of the next in line of, controversial comic books that have kind of occurred in the market. And again, while I have no, ill will towards the people who made this book, I have nothing to really say about Toronto Fan Expo. But this was just one of those books that once again, while people are being kind of sensitive to everything that happened with the, Miles Morales acetate book, this one also sort of felt some controversy out there in the market. But then we get to, what I think is kind of the main story that kind of motivated me to talk about, this video here today. And that is this idea of, this new collectible that is coming out that is going to be sponsored by CGC. This is also a retail comic book that is celebrating the 30th anniversary of the Death of Superman issue. And CGC has partnered with this retailer here, Big Time Collectibles, to kind of produce this new kind of 30-year celebration and put it out there in the market. And this is where, I start to get a little uncomfortable as someone kind of watching what's happening in the comic book space. Because remember, CGC is, by their own admission, by their About section on their website, they are a third-party grader who is a trusted service that is going to objectively evaluate comic books in the market. They are not a retailer. But once they do partnerships like this with their logo and name on a particular comic book, well, now they're starting to dip their toes into the retailer space. And this is just something that doesn't feel right, doesn't sit right with me. Now, CGC had actually come out with an article announcing this partnership and announcing this comic book. But as you can see, they, for some reason, took the article down. Maybe they're already feeling the heat. Maybe they're already sort of regretting what it is that they're going to be doing with this partnership. The page no longer exists, but luckily, Ryan from Automatic Comic Book, shout out to him. We were talking about this, the other day, and he happened to post on his Instagram the article that has since been taken down, so we can kind of revisit it here. Basically, let me kind of read it through. CGC exclusive Death of Superman 30th anniversary gold foil variant. CGC has partnered with Big Time Collectibles to release an all-new exclusive variant cover. CGC is excited to announce that we have partnered with Big Time Collectibles to bring fans another limited CGC exclusive variant comic book. Now, they say another limited one, but the other one that they're referring to, at least as far as I understand it, let me know in the comments if you guys know of other times they've done it, were even more so gimmicks where they had like a 9.5 grade, like a very special kind of unique thing, not necessarily a pure retail variant. But let me continue. This new cover is for Death of Superman, a 30th anniversary special #1, which includes the first appearance of the character Doombreaker. The article carries on there, but obviously Ryan only posted what he did, and I can't show you guys the rest of it. But this is basically what the book looks like right here. Big Time Collectibles is creating these comic books. And one of the things I think is interesting about this is that you'll notice that they have the gold foil version and they have the silver foil version. And basically what was discussed in the article and how I've been able to kind of understand it by reading Big Time's accounts and stuff is that the gold foil comic book is going to only be available through CGC 9.8 grade. And there's only going to be 300 of them, and all of them are going to be numbered. And the silver one is going to be, the raw comic book that people are allowed access to. Now, this sort of kind of brings into question a lot of things that I'm just confused about. You're going to have a 300 print count for the gold foil, and all of them are guaranteed to be 9.8. Well, if that is the case, then in theory, there should be other gold foils that were also printed that did not reach the 9.8 grade, right? I mean, everyone out there who knows has done, pre-screened 9.8 submissions, and there's always a handful of them that get the 9.6 grade. So where are the other, raw copies that didn't hit those 9.8s if that's what you're going to see? So I would personally love to see that transparency and have it shown that there are other raw copies out there. And then, in theory, you guys are going to get rid of them or dispose of them or recycle them or whatever you're going to do, because if you want to honor this 300 print count, then you're going to have to dispose of those other comic books. And so that's kind of really where it starts to just get a little bit muddy in these waters where, CGC is guaranteeing that there's going to be 300 9.8s, yet are you actually grading, say 400 books and picking the 300 that did come off of the printer in perfect condition? Are there extra ones that were 9.6 grades? There have been some people saying that, that is in fact the case. But, as far as we can understand, it's all a transparency issue. We're not sort of seeing, how the sausage is made in this situation. And I think that's really important, especially since CGC is dipping into this retail space. Now, there's also been accounts that apparently CGC is not in this for any kind of money, or they're not making money on this particular thing. But again, their logo is on the back of the book. Why even put your logo on the back of the book if you're not actually in it for any money? If it's purely just to have brand recognition, I mean, I feel like you guys need to have a discussion with your internal team, because the optics of it, just putting your logo on the book, is really problematic in my opinion. And, not to harp on, that particular story and what's going on with that, because, hey, we'll see what happens. They took down the article. Maybe they're backtracking, maybe they're regretting this decision, or they're, having second thoughts on it. That could be all well and good. But I think it just kind of brings back to, the original point of the video, which was the Marshall McLuhan statement. The medium is the message. And if you guys don't know, Marshall McLuhan, what he was basically saying or inferring with that idea is that, the idea of the format to which we consume things, whether it be television or YouTube or, how we consume, our collectibles in this particular case, comic books, how we buy them through things like Whatnot and the new online worlds that we live in, that ultimately is going to define the type of products and the type of messaging that we're actually going to be getting. It's not so much what people want to create, it's the medium to which things are being sold and bought through and consumed through that is going to create and incentivize those types of things that are being made. So in this particular instance, we're kind of entering this weird world. And I feel like this is where we're getting a lot of animosity in the community, is that Whatnot as an app is so efficient and it's so helpful and it's a wonderful tool and it works perfectly well. But it also is incentivizing this idea of FOMO and hot comics and, the flavor of the week and look at this book and now, and buy and on screen and things like that. And again, I'm not trying to be like old man yelling at cloud in this particular situation. It's just that there are things with the way that the comic book market is developing, these ideas of like doing retail variant exclusives and con exclusives and selling them on Whatnot, and CGC thinking we can do a partnership and let's get a quick pop and let's take an old cover and let's throw a gimmick on it. I mean, it kind of feels like we're going back to the 90s where, the efficiency of being able to get these quick flips and to hype up these books and to get it out there fast is creating this FOMO adrenaline, and it's becoming the most efficient way to sell comic books. I mean, it's not enough to just say, hey, we want to have some of our comic books that have good stories that we just like, graded by CGC so that we can appreciate them, in a plastic case. It's becoming more of this idea, this chase for the 9.8, this push towards the hot new comic book, even more so than what we were seeing before in, things like Hot Lists and Key Collector and things like that. I mean, this is just the new kind of world we're living in. And I think a lot of the frustrations are coming from, this idea and this feeling that, there's a lot of FOMO being drummed up even more now than ever before. I mean, just the simple way that Whatnot is created. And again, I don't want to harp on it because I think it's a good app, but just the way that it's created. I mean, 15-second auctions, everybody is incentivized to, feel this sort of FOMO and to hype up this book. As a seller, you are incentivized to say, come on, man, let's bid this book, 10 seconds left, 5 seconds left. And as buyers, you're there sitting. I mean, it's already hard enough to be on an eBay auction that has 6 days left and worry about what the finished price is going to be, let alone being in a Whatnot app, kind of getting this dopamine hit and seeing that, I only have 5 seconds left, 4 seconds left, 3 seconds left, and I only knew that this book was going up for sale 10 seconds ago. You know what I mean? So I just think that the way that it is built is going to sort of incentivize kind of negative behavior patterns for comic book collectors. I mean, for, even not even comic book collectors, but for buyers of, any sort of collectible that's going to be on there. And this is going to extend to eBay as well once they kind of dip their toes into the water and, we start to get onto their live selling platform. Ultimately, where I'm going with this is, I think we are definitely entering a new age of comics. I really do believe this. I think this post-pandemic comic book boom is, finding a different kind of life as far as like how people buy things, how people consume things. I think Whatnot is going to be an app that is super efficient and it's going to hang around for a long time. But the question I have, the things that I think it is important for us to think about, whether we're someone who just wants to buy comic books or whether we're someone who wants to sell or whether we're developers at Whatnot is, what kind of ethics do we need to think about when we are engaging in these platforms? I mean, this is a unanswerable question. This is something that is so huge. I mean, even now, like when we think about social media as a device, like even now there are ethics issues with Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and TikTok and Snapchat. How, should these apps be designed? They're obviously catered to, getting people to have the maximum amount of time on their app. They're obviously catered to get people to be constantly engaged with it. And really, you could say that, hey, they're just making a product and, you just have to choose to not engage, or you just have to, choose to manage your own kind of time on it. But is that enough? Is it enough to have, just the app be just an app and have no, overseeing body kind of regulate what we think is, kind of fair or not fair, or what is good for the hobby or good for the community or good for consumers or good for buyers or good for sellers? I don't know. And I think as long as this continues and this medium continues to blossom, I think there's going to be continued animosity amongst the comic book collecting hobby. And there's going to be more companies incentivized to continue to do these sort of retail variants, and CGC to do these kind of interesting partnerships and whatnot, exclusives and Jim Lee signings and things like this, just to get the quick pop. And again, I don't mean to be a doomer. I don't mean to be a negative Nancy. But if we think back to, the 90s, one of the things that kind of put comic books in a dark era was the fact that they were creating all of these gimmicks. So not to say that we're there yet, but I really do have some concerns with where we are moving in the comic book hobby. And I thought I would just kind of share my thoughts with you guys. Anyways, that's all I have for this video. Let me know what you guys think. What do you guys think is going on right now with all of this? What do you feel about this partnership with CGC? How do you feel about Whatnot? Do you think that this is just kind of a growing pains that's going on with, the new tech that is entering the comic book space? Do you think that we're heading down a wrong path? Let me know in the comments what you guys think. Drop me a like, comment, subscribe if you're enjoying the content, and we'll see you in the next video.